Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you Claude Cowork. I'm going to start with this use case. Imagine you're a coffee shop owner, but it could be any business. On day one, you get a professional photographer to take 30 photos. Then using Cowork, you get the AI to generate Instagram text for you. You place them together and then every day you can decide whether to post or not. I've created 3 assets here and I'll show you how to create many more. And I think the text is excellent. So these are the 3 examples. Now let's get into Cowork and I'll show you how to build this at the end. So this is a Claude desktop app. As you can see at the top, you have the 3 different tools. Chat, you're very familiar with. It's where you will send requests. It's good for ideas, generation, so on. Code is a more advanced aspect and you can get Claude to create code and build apps with it. And Cowork is a perfect bridge. So there's a number of reasons why Claude Cowork is so powerful, particularly in comparison to Chat. First of all, while in Chat you ask for a specific output and it delivers, in Cowork you can ask for a task requiring multiple steps and Cowork can execute that. 2, you can work in a project folder. So that coffee shop example that I showed you previously, that is through a project folder. 3rd, you can connect to different external tools. So Slack, Notion, Gmail, Calendar, etc. 4, you can have scheduled tasks. So let's say you connect it to your calendar. Every day you can ask Claude for a daily brief. Beyond that, you can actually access Claude Cowork on your phone using the dispatch feature, but you must have your laptop on to make that work. But before we jump into use cases, let me show you how to set up Claude Cowork properly. First, let me show you how to set up Claude Cowork properly. So if you click on your profile, and then you go to Settings, click on Cowork, and here in Global Instructions, you can add text that applies to every Cowork set. Click here and add your instructions. Now, a great resource for setting up is this GitHub account. I'm going to leave a link to this page in the description, but briefly, this is JJ Englert, who's got a great video on Cowork that went viral a little while ago, and he's got his whole checklist, which I recommend you follow, but for here, I'll just show you a couple of things that are particularly useful. So here with the global instructions, he has a template, which is very solid. So just copy that, paste it in here, and update these sections. What I particularly like is that the instructions are very clear. It tells Claude to read context files before starting any task. This one is very important. Ask any clarifying questions before executing. It's similar to in Claude Code, there's a planning mode. So it just makes sure that Claude is fully aware of what you want to do before it starts the operations. It's also a good way of reducing the token usage and also producing results that you actually want and ultimately saves time. So similar with this point. Then the output preferences, that's really up to you. I like direct and concise language, so I'm going to keep it at that. And then this safety aspect is very important. So it tells it never to delete files without explicit confirmation and to flag assumptions explicitly before acting on them and so on. So this is one point that I'll go into in a little bit more detail because it's one that a lot of people miss. So on the actual Claude Cowork page, after you see all the different functions that Claude Cowork can do for you, they have a section on the security aspects. So if you read the safety guide, I recommend it because you are in practice giving Claude access to different files, different folders, and you just need to be a bit careful that you're not giving it access to files with sensitive information like financial documents. You need to be especially cautious with computer use. So Claude is interacting with your actual desktop and apps outside the virtual machine. And there's some ways of limiting the access that Claude has. So that's why the safety processes detailed here are important, but just in practice, be careful with giving it access to anything that is particularly sensitive. And there, safety message over. let's get into the use cases. Go back to your main interface. Just like in Claude Chat, you'll want to give Cowork as much context as you can so that it's a better place to answer the questions that you'll have. So to do this, again, we'll go to JJ's, come down here to ViralX starter prompt and copy that. So just to give you some idea, it's telling Claude Cowork that it wants full context about who I am, what I do, how I work. We're building a brain that makes you feel useful from the first message. You're going to interview me in phases, ask me questions, then build the files based on my answers. Don't rush, don't assume, ask before you build. And then it goes into the different phases. And once you've gone through all of these, it'll take a little bit of time, but Claude will have great context so that it can answer your questions more efficiently. So just paste that in here. Let's go, and then run it and jump back with me once you've done that. Okay, great. Now let's jump into our first task. So the easiest starting point is just to get Cowork to organize some documents on your computer. So here I have a bunch of documents that are a bit all over the place that I'm going to take and put into this demo organize folder. And then I'm going to ask Cowork to organize it. So first I need to select the folder. You can go to projects. I've already got demo organize set up, but otherwise you'll go into create new project. This is starting from scratch. You can import it from Claude Chat, or you can use an existing folder. In this case, it's an existing folder that I'll find on my desktop, demo organize, away we go. Here I'll ask Claude, can you organize this folder in a way that makes sense? If you have any questions, let me know. So while this is running, you can always jump into chat and get it to carry out any tasks that are more linear at the same time. So it's a good way of working in Claude at the same time between the chat and the Cowork windows. Okay, so this is what it's come back with. It's identified the different types of files, it's proposed a structure, and it's going to ask me a couple of questions before I proceed. So I answered its questions, and now it's continuing with the workflow. Now, if you see up here in the top right, it has a list of tasks that it's executing. This is a very simple task. There's just 2, but the more complex tasks you ask it, you'll see that there are multiple steps. But it's a really good way of visualizing what exactly Claude is working on at that moment. And then if we go here, we see that this is all tidied up. Open the folder, and it's neatly organized into 3 different subfolders. Perfect. So that's one use case done. Organizing folders, I promise you, is so helpful and is a great use case to start with. Next, I'm going to show you how to connect Claude Cowork to different tools. So if you go down here under settings again, and you go to connectors, you have a list of tools that you'll be familiar with. Now, just configure and connect to those that you're going to be using for that session. For this demo, I'm going to go for Google Calendar. And then you just log in. And continue here. So now you're connected. Now I'll show you how we can use that. You can also find your connectors here under Customize Connectors. And also here, when you press plus, this is where you can quickly turn them on, turn them off, and so on. So we're just going to keep Google Calendar open. And I'm going to ask Claude, create a daily brief so that I know what meetings I have tomorrow and any context that you can provide to help me better prepare for those meetings. As you can see again, it's connecting to Google Calendar, and then it's going to make a plan accordingly. I don't want to reveal too much, but it's been very effective. It's given me the meetings that I have, some context. It's given me some prep nudges, told me to respond to two of the invites, mentioned if there's an agenda or not. And it's just a great thing to start the day with. So at this point, you can actually turn this into scheduled task. You can ask it to do the same activity every workday. So you just prompt it right here. I'm approving this. Great. Now I have a daily meeting brief scheduled to run every weekday from 9 a.m. Portugal time. And it tells me to hit the run now from the scheduled section in the sidebar. So let's do that. Done. So that should be working nicely. So that's an idea of what you can do with Cowork, but there's plenty more. So again, by connecting to your different tools, you could, for instance, ask it to draft emails, identify emails where you said you were going to follow up, but you didn't, turn key emails from your clients into a brief that then you put on Notion. So these different tools, you can connect one to another. But again, just be mindful of what you share with Claude Cowork. You don't want to share anything that is too sensitive. Now I want to talk about organizing your project folders. So this is a project structure that I recommend. First of all, create a project folder. Let's call it Claude Cowork. The first document will be a claude.md file. As you remember from previous sessions, that is your global file that tells Claude all the context it needs, who you are, what you're doing, what your writing style is, what your preferences are, etc. Then each project folder can have a structure a bit like this. So with the coffee content or cafe content one, we have a claude.md file. So this is for information about the project itself. And then if there's anything that within this project folder only, it overrides the claude.md, that's where you put it. So let's say you have a different brand voice for different clients. So you might have that in this lowercase claude.md file. Then inputs are what you give Claude, references are examples. So as usual, when you give Claude good examples of what you want, then the outputs it gives you will be closer to those. Outputs is what Claude creates after you ask it the questions, and then assets are images, files, and raw material. I have the same structure for unnamed project 2, and so on and so forth. Now let me show you what I mean. So I've created this folder, Claude Cowork demo, and within this overarching folder, you'll have all of your projects. So you could have multiple folders here. And also nested here is the overarching claude.md file. So that will talk about who you are, and then it'll have your preferences that apply to all the project folders. So it could be your writing style, it could be how you want documents saved, and so on and so forth. And within each project folder, you'll have another Claude, lowercase md, that talks about that project itself. So what the project does. You can also give it details about brand voice if it's, specific to that folder rather than your applicable globally. You'll have your assets. So in this case, we're taking photos. These are pictures that I took from ChatGPT. I just asked it for a bunch of different generic coffee shop photos, and the output is pretty good if you ask me. The outputs folder is empty at the moment because that's where answers to our questions in Cowork will be. And then in the reference folder, I have references.md, which are examples of outputs that I like. So I took a couple of those images and I asked Claude to come up with Instagram text for it. And then I had a couple of back and forths with it to make sure that I was happy with the output. And then I saved that output here in references. So now let's go back to Cowork and see how it operates. Okay, so let's see how this works. So here, you click on choose your folder. So we're going to do in Claude Cowork demo. For argument's sake, I'm going to allow Claude to operate within all the projects, but I could also just specify this one here. So now I'll just test it out. Can you create Instagram copy for the first image asset in the assets folder? Cowork finished the task and it came back with this. Some days just call for a good cup and somewhere to be, that mid-morning pause between meetings, errands, and nothing in particular, with some hashtags, Google Maps link, opening hours, and so on. Now, we'll want to be able to see this alongside the picture, otherwise it sort of defeats the purpose. So let's ask Claude to do that. This is good, but I want to see it in context with the image next to it. Display the image and the text simultaneously. Okay, so it's come back with this. Obviously, the image doesn't render here, so let's click on Google Chrome. Okay, we got there in the end, but it took a couple of iterations. So first of all, asked for the image to be next to the text, but the first output wasn't visible. I couldn't see it, so I asked for it again. Then I could see it, but there were some text issues that I had to change. And then finally, I'm happy with the output. And here it is. What's kind of neat about this is I told it that it's not an actual image of an Instagram post, but I just wanted to see the text adjacent to it so that I could copy and paste the text. So here it's added the functionality where I just click once and it selects all the text, which is perfect for my use case. Now let's go back into Cowork and see if it works with the other assets. This is exactly the output I want. Make sure that all future outputs emulate this style. Now I want you to do the same with the image, the rest of the image assets. Okay, so it's come back to me with these. Before I show you them, I want you to make note of one thing. So since I said this is exactly the output I want, it has remembered that style for future outputs, which is awesome. Then it's gone through and it's read different files. One of them was too large, so it actually reformatted it and then carried out the execution. These are things that you just cannot do in chat. Nice. I love that it is linked to the text. I mean, this is pretty good copy for a minimal amount of work. Breakfast is better when there's something worth choosing. Crossroads. Okay, a little cheesy, but still pretty good. And I mean, all of this just happened with a few clicks. So you can see just how powerful this is. And I've only used 7 examples here. But you could use 30, you could use 100, whatever. Just as long as you have enough credits, you can create an unlimited amount of content. So there you go. I hope you try this out. Let me know in the discussion if you've done it and what you've come up with. All right, see you in the next one.